discussion, I decided that it would get you guys a little bit of help today. Trying a few things, hopefully showing you guys a few different examples that maybe you can incorporate into your class, but really the objectives today are just to start developing our collaborative community, which we already have, but it's just nice to see faces and get to know each other better and know where who we can talk to. And so we'll talk about defining active learning, and I would like to talk about what we would like to define active learning as, because you guys all know it has many definitions out there, and I think we probably all see eye to eye, but just to clarify that. And then share some more strategies and ideas, and Rachel will pop in here with our podcast, and then we'll just talk about some of the challenges and benefits of using active learning. And so please feel free, with this being the primary objective, to jump in anytime. I have a lot of experience teaching, but I know you guys do too, so I'd love to. All right, and so for our intro, what we're going to do, and something that's so important to do with your students, is have a note card. And sometimes Rachel does this on her first days of classes. And this year she actually had to email them their information. Grab a note card, put some information on there for me. So ideally I would have done this before this began, and I would have gotten them all back from you, and I would have integrated all of your names and ideas into the lecture. And so that takes a lot of work.
So do you want us to say where we're from right now, or where we grew up? Or
Yeah,
student,
you can be whatever you want. As this collaborative center, I would love to know a little bit about you. So maybe how long you've been in Wyoming, or if you're a native, or where you're from. And then some of those hobbies and passions and interests related to science would be great, and then some that don't relate to science. And you don't need to put your email, but if you would like to get attached, and if we start kind of an email bank, then I can add that to some of our lists. So, and when you finish that, you'll come over here and you'll take a sticky note, and you will just put where you line up. So are you confident using active learning teaching practices? Where on this continuum are you? And you don't have to put your email, but if you want to be involved, I'm going to just put a sticky note where you feel for this statement. Yeah, kind of closer to each other. Oh, yes, fantastic. I'll take your card up here.
Now, where am I from? Is that intellectual or like where I grew up?
I just would love to know a little bit more about you guys.
Passions, interests, and hobbies. Okay. Check.
Thank you. Alright, so unfortunately you're not going to get too much more comfortable because we have another little roundabout activity. And this can be done, it is a little bit trickier with really large class sizes, but it works pretty well up till 50, maybe 100 would be pushing it. But around the classroom you'll notice there are 4 posters that are up. What is active learning? So our goal to define it, some strategies in the back that you may use or you know of that are being used, and then you have challenges and benefits over here. So what you're going to do is just go to one of those, and I often do this and have students get into groups. but perfect. So we just treat this as a gallery walk. This is sometimes what it's called. And you can come and write down what you think this is. Yeah, kind of do it in groups. Be a team. All right? Yes. Be a team. So if I have to number you and put you in those places, I will. Okay, I will. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
We already made it.
All right, then go. Get up and go then.
Jamie's up.
Inspiring students is sometimes, always. Yes. All right. Yeah, and you, the closest one that you're to, spread out, be about equal. You'll notice there's student markers there, and then we're gonna rotate after you do a few minutes at that station.
What group am I in?
Oh, I know. I gave up. Okay, this threw me off. All right, you can go over there. Okay. Are you going? Yeah, perfect. This is perfect. Yes.
I like it.
How is it? All right, here are some of the challenges. Requires engaged degree.
That's right, where's group 1? Engaging student.
You can show
them.
Nice, yeah.
Oh, we have like a, what's it called when you like, whatever. Helps learn higher learning engagement. Yeah, maybe it trains in competencies as well as content.
I always think that I learned an idea, like marker sniffing, like neurological damage.
Really?
Yeah. Right. 2 more things, and then you're gonna rotate. Try to get 2 more things jotted down. We're gonna rotate again.
I'd say trains in competencies as well as just content, right? So maybe that has to do with higher learning though.
Accommodate.
So trains in quantitative reasoning in addition to just learning about
accommodating,
facts related to evolutionary theory or whatever.
Right, that would be ideal, but that
Right.
reasons.
So the skills that we and applying concepts.
And applying.
with the actual,
Yep.
yeah, with whatever it is.
To migrate. I know that becomes something.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
These non-beat.
Yes, yes.
As I go by.
Great job. And I think that would be hurt. Yeah.
Come on, hurry up.
And I like accommodating.
No sniffing. It's engaged learning.
Maybe we can move it up moving or
All right.
Oh.
If you already agreed with them, you can do little checks or smiley faces.
Oh, we're just doing one.
Sorry, I just have to ask. I think there are any challenges.
Well, we get to check if we agree and then add on.
Oh, yeah.
too many students.
Can we cross any off?
If you don't like one, sure.
Do you agree with these? What else do you want? Benefits. Students doing it to me, students perform it.
Sufficient feedback?
So the responsibility involves often. So yeah, it helps them learn.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. I don't know how to paraphrase it. It's just ownership over the material.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Did you with one?
The whole thing is challenges. Yes,
We excluded you on the last one.
how about the content versus
Activity.
Did they get it all?
I think one benefit is kind of so
Yeah, I know.
to be a leader.
Oh, no.
So in the context of, yeah, actually, that's great. Students get to take a leadership role, how about that? How to relate.
All right, I think we should.
Students actually.
We're here.
Yeah, if you haven't done this, just grab a sticky and you'll put where you feel
That's it.
for the state. All right. You guys can kind of rotate, make sure you see each one of them, and then you can kind of start going back to your.
And then like and that could be in person, all different types of I mean, was that the Freeman paper? Yeah,
Looks good, looks good, all right.
All right, so at least make sure you check out the other ones, see what they are, and then we'll kind of move on. And we'll come back to all of them, don't worry.
There's one more, but I think we're.
Thanks for not.
What is, yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Yes. Which one's dancing? And, okay.
Okay, who felt the need to cite their statement? Seriously. Freeman at all?
I think you're gonna say they get higher grades and you can prove it, so.
Oh, these are all great things.
So I think one of the challenges that pops up on active learning a lot, and I can see it over there, is time management. And often, right, that's one of the issues. So I would love to have continued it a little longer, right? And once you get back to your original poster, then you can chat it over with your group, see what was added, see what was common, and then you can present it to the class if it's a small enough class. Or you can keep it up. Sometimes they do it with vocabulary, and it can be kept up for the whole unit. So active learning, let's talk about a definition a little bit. We talk about education, right, and it is not just the dissemination of information. We have to learn how to think. And it goes back to Einstein, and before that, we'll look at a little bit of history. Sorry, Ashley got off. But we go back to BC, and we have Confucius, and I did look a little bit at, because not this language, and it's maybe not really him down the line. But a lot of it said it was him, and I did find a journal that said that. So anyways, just bear with me. But I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, and I do and I understand. So if we do it, we learn it better, right? These ideas are not old. We look at Dewey. He was the learn by doing guy way back. Right? Focus on let's do something. Let's get hands-on. Creativity, we'll talk about the importance of that later, but very, very important. And then active learning, Freeman, we've seen pop up again and again, and I really liked that definition that he has given us, and it's the engaging of students, right, in the process of learning through these activities. The problem with active learning and with defining active learning is that you get people who don't understand the definition. They go, oh, I use a clicker. I ask my students questions, but they don't wait. They don't get student responses. They, so it's really this engagement of the material. And active learning can be, when I think of it as the umbrella term that includes so many things. And we'll go back and we'll look at a lot of these strategies, and I'm sure I have them listed, and you probably have more than I thought of. So, is there anyone who doesn't like the term active learning, doesn't like to use it? Yeah.
It's not that I don't like it, but has anybody seen these recent articles coming out against active learning in the past couple of weeks in New York Times and elsewhere? I thought they were really interesting. I thought they had some salient points too, frankly. Part of the New York Times one had to do with sometimes a lecture is a process, particularly if you imagine the humanities, of constructing argument, and students do need to learn to construct an argument. And also active learning and the idea that you have to have a change of maybe pandering to their, so their lack of attention span, basically, or that they're not trained in having a long attention span. And there were several other arguments. I thought, it's kind of interesting. Just interesting to see that.
I thought that article was really interesting too, and I really liked the idea of cultivating attention as something you need to think about.
And also constructing arguments. I mean, that there is really a line of reasoning you have to take. There's a logical progression. And it is true that people are less compelling when they do not make a well-reasoned argument. So those are important. I'm not sure that I think active learning doesn't do that, but to some extent modeling, there is a difference between modeling. Modeling and logical argument can be good as well.
I think it might need to clarify between active learning, active teaching, and self-learning. So these are kind of different styles for teaching.
Yeah, and first I didn't make this beautiful picture, but I imagine it. And I basically everybody has their term that resonates best with them. And as long as you're engaging students in the material and they're using higher order thinking, right? And they're not memorizing everything, that's not regurgitative, then I think it's active learning. And it depends who you meet and who you go. And when you read a lot of those articles, it's fascinating because they define it differently. And I would see active learning, even when you can use narratives, as being a form of active learning, which we'll look at a little bit. So, yeah, it's interesting, and you definitely have something to be careful about, something to define carefully in your research. But I think, we need to be emphasizing higher order thinking, right? Solutions, problems. Do we have agreement there? Like, no, yes?
I think we do, but not at I think there are some things that need to be memorized.
Gotta have some of them. All right, so how do we do this active learning, right? We've defined it. There's still debate. There always will be, I'm sure. But how do we actually do it, right? How do we create the conditions in which they can learn, rather than how do we, sorry, Einstein gave me a little bit of inspiration when I was preparing this. I'm like, he just did it all. Right, but he's thinking about it, how do we create this situation where they can learn rather than just memorize? And so these strategies are endless. Let's see, will someone volunteer to just run in the back and read off some of what we had? Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, what did we think of?
Big picture, minute paper game, case study project, open-end questions, which seem to fall into also Socratic questioning, discussion in groups, script sequence. We thought that sounded kind of racy. I didn't know what it was. Nobody else knows it either. Dancing, puzzles, inquiry-based labs, and experiments.
Someone's got to tell us about the script sequence.
It's just a way for getting students to think through processes. So especially for like introductory classes where the process is more important than sort of memorizing the steps, you can give them a sequence of things and have them kind of figure out what order they go in. So it's good for learning things like septomeiosis or mitosis, where what you want them to think about is actually what's happening, as opposed to what, at least I know I did it in undergrad, where I just memorized all the names and what they meant and then after that forgot what they meant.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've done that before. I never called it that, but just had the different order of the operations on here, and then you have to arrange them. Right. They go in order. So that works well too. Of course, it's lots of preparing. But, I'll share one of John's favorite examples that he's used with a huge classroom that I thought was fantastic. But so the active learning strategies are endless, and I know you guys want a lot, and I hope that you like some of these. You know, this one is a really easy visual. You can use it at the end of the day too, and use a different color. And have students do it at the end, and so we'll do that at the end. We probably don't get a huge change, but that's a really easy visual thing to look at to identify as your students are changing, you know, their opinions and their ways of thinking. Demonstrations are huge. You can just, a demo a day keeps the doctor away. That's my quote for when I teach. You can bring a demo in, that's going to be fantastic, you know, fire, all of these things. You guys know this. Smelly markers, right? So, let's see what I want to touch on here. Maybe we'll just let Rachel go into Flips. So Flips is a huge new thing, and technology is challenging to some of us and inspiring to others. You know, it comes and goes. I have more, it's a little bit challenging for me, but I'm learning. I'm working it in there. But flipping your classroom is another strategy of getting some of that content, some of that memorization that we have to have outside the classroom. So one of the things that I hear from everybody is, my students won't read the book, so I have to tell them it all the time. Well, the truth is, half or over half of your students did read the book the first day, the first week. And then they came in, and then they were continually reinforced because you just gave them all the information. You know, that's happened to me a lot. I read the book and I prep, and I'm like, why did I do this? I could have, you know, gone skiing. Not really, you know. And so if you have to reinforce that behavior from day one, you know, and if you come in and you're having a discussion and Johnny can't participate because he has no idea what's going on, he's going to be embarrassed, and he's going to start reading, and he's going to start getting more prepared. So if you don't have those types of activities, though, they won't feel responsible for any of that, and they won't have ownership over any of their learning. So let's go and see what Rachel has to say about flipped classrooms and active learning. Sorry, I was making a weird buzz. So
At Once literally teach. I am so jazzed that I get to be with you today, and that technology enables me to be in two places at once, literally teaching the class that I'm teaching right now, and also being here to talk about active learning with all of you and share some stories that I know Callie has expounded upon at this point. But I want to talk specifically about the fact that engaging students actively in their learning during the traditional lecture period often entails taking a certain amount of the content outside of the classroom. That is, we sometimes refer to this as flipping your class or making it an upside down class. There's been a lot of discussion about how to reference that, though I think the term flipping has certainly become fairly popular. And just this morning, I was delving into the literature a little bit about the flipped classroom and found an article in the International Journal of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education that references the flipped classroom, and I liked the quotes. One of the quotes that they used, they said, the flipped classroom represents a student-centered method of fostering academic involvement that is recognized as a positive contributor to student success. Anytime you put student-centered and student success like twice in a sentence, I'm so jazzed. So let me just take a moment to say a couple of things about the way in which I like to use the flipped lecture. That is, I believe that not only does this allow you to take content outside of the classroom, freeing up the classroom period to do lots of active, student-engaged exercises, but it also enables you to do better than you could have done by lecturing in the classroom. For example, it allows you to take students to a remote location on a field trip with your content presentation. Or it allows you in a lecture-based class to take them into the lab. A good example of this is the biochemistry course that we teach in our department for non-majors. This is the MOLB 3610, one of my favorite classes to teach, but it is a lecture-based class only. It has no lab component. So using a flipped classroom enables me to add a lab component. So the two videos that I'm about to show you, the first one is taking students on a field trip to talk about acid-base reactions, acid-base chemistry as an introductory portion of our biochemistry class. And then the second clip that I want to show is where I'm taking them into the lab. So showing that we can use these pre-watched videos, right? The students watch these before they come to class in theory or outside of their typical engagement to take them to places that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise gotten to go, even if we had lectured in the classroom. I'm so jazzed to be joining you today from a ranch outside of a place called Cedar Edge. It's on the mesa near Grand Junction, and I'm doing a little skiing here, but I happen to be staying at a vacation rental that is actually a ranch. And so I've got in my backdrop the horses here, and also what's really cool about this place is that it happens to be on an alkaline flat. So I just talked to the rancher here, and he talked about some of the difficulties that he has with ranching on this alkaline soil. So alkaline meaning basic, and so we've got a lot of basic salts in the soil in this area. And I actually tried right before I came out to brew some tea that would have a natural pH indicator in the tea, and it's actually got acai and blueberry and pomegranate, and it's got a natural pH indicator. So I brought that with me too to see if we can see the effects of the alkaline soil on that pH indicator. So in this moment, we're transitioning into more coverage on acids and bases, and looking at eventually we're going to turn our conversation away from strong acids to weak acids, and we're going to be looking at the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, pKa and Ka values, and looking at eventually at natural buffers, that is buffers within the body that are things ranging from the natural buffering that comes from amino acids all the way to the bicarbonate buffering system, perhaps the most famous of all of the natural buffering systems, and incredibly pertinent to the equestrian world. So those of you who are horse lovers, but also those of you who are yourselves elite athletes, much like horses that are elite athletes, using a bicarbonate milkshake is a common performance enhancer within the world of the equestrian world. And so I want to read to you actually from an article about the bicarbonate buffering system and talk a little bit about that. So it's in the Veterinary Topics article, and it says, milkshakes leave a bad taste. And at every level of racing, so much time and money are invested in each horse that trainers and owners will want to find the extra edge that will help get even the most astutely trained and conditioned athlete to be more competitive. So manipulating timing of feeds, feeding, supplements can alter physical performance. One such controversial substance that has been actively administered to racehorses since approximately 1989 in an effort to enhance performance is sodium bicarbonate. Commonly known as baking soda, a milkshake is a colloquial term used to describe a combination of approximately 500 grams of sodium bicarbonate, glucose, and often other additives. These substances reduce acidic conditions within actively contracting muscle cells, and the milkshakes are used as buffers. So our conversation will be turning towards the latter portions of our coverage to buffering systems. So let's take a minute to see if we can get our natural pH indicator to register this alkaline soil. So I'm going to try to move things around so you guys can kind of see the white alkaline flat in this area. In fact, you can see all around the alkalinity of the soil. So we're going to see if we can get our natural buffer to work here, our natural pH indicator. There are a lot of natural buffers too out there. I'm going to grab just a little bit of this alkaline soil. So we've got our natural pH indicator. Here's our very alkaline soil. You can see that there. Oh yeah. So we're getting an interesting color change as we see the reaction taking place. And we recognize that this is changing from a very purpley color to almost getting in places yellowy green color. So nice natural pH indicator there in the pomegranate, blueberry, acai tea. Awesome! As I was walking back to the house, the pH indicator started to turn even more of a greenish, almost blue color. So I wanted to take a moment to show you how that reaction had continued even as I was walking back. And I also began to synthesize as I was headed to the house this idea of putting these two concepts together. So what about horses that naturally, such as the ones that were in the backdrop of that clip, what about those horses that do live in natural conditions where the soil is alkaline and they're eating hay that's grown in alkaline soil? And I started to wonder about natural performance enhancement based upon a diet rich in alkaline hay and alkaline soil. And I thought this might be something we add to our extra credit discussion on bicarbonate buffers that is natural alkaline soil, such as we saw in this environment. So cool. Let's get a little bit closer view of this dialysis tubing. The brand that we're using in this case is Spectrum, Spectrapore. And what's really important is to look on the side of the box to make sure that you're getting the desired molecular weight cutoff. So when you look up close there, you can see that the molecular weight cutoff for this particular dialysis tubing is between 12 and 14,000 molecular weight units, often termed Daltons in the world of biochemistry. So 12 to 14,000 Daltons will be retained within the dialysis tubing, whereas anything smaller than that is going to pass right through. So let's actually go ahead and get a feel for what this is like in terms of pliability and before it's put into water, how does it feel? So you might be able to kind of hear this if I just pick up a little bit of this tubing. You can check this out and notice that it's a little bit crispy before it goes into water, not very pliable. However, I have some that's been sitting in water for a while soaking, and we'll pull that over. And what you notice about the tubing after it's been sitting in water is that it becomes really pliable. And I'll see if I can pull this out of here. Yeah, and you can see now it really is a lot more like sausage casing. It really becomes a lot easier to work with. And now you can pull it open and you can actually put whatever solution you want to put into it and allow it to dialyze. Of course, that means that you have to hold that solution in there. So I have some dialysis clips that are used for that. And we'll pull some of those out. And I'm going to go ahead and put a clip on the end here, and that'll actually keep whatever liquid is in here from coming out. I'll hold on to that. Sometimes you'll even put a knot in the end of the tubing as well. You can, if you really are hard up for money, you can just use knots. You put several knots in there and that'll work. So then we'll add our liquid in here containing the protein. And today I'm going to give a try to something kind of exciting. There is a protein that is very, very commonly worked with in the lab called albumin, and bovine serum albumin is one of the very common ones. So we're going to actually put a mixture of albumin into the dialysis tubing, but we're not going to stop there because we want to make this visual. So we're going to put some dye in with the albumin. And since albumin is actually a negatively charged or anionic protein, we're going to put in a positively charged dye and hope that that dye will color the negatively charged protein. And we're not going to stop there. We're going to add another dye, a Congo red dye, that is also negatively charged and hope that the protein repels that. So we're going to hope that the protein will retain the blue dye, repel the red dye, and that as we dialyze the solution, we're going to see that the red dye will come out because it's low molecular weight, and that the blue dye, because it binds to the high molecular weight protein, will be retained in the dialysis tubing. So we're going to do this cooking show style, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. Okay, so to begin with, I'm adding the cationic or positively charged dye called methylene blue to the protein, and we're hoping that the negatively charged protein will bind to this positively charged dye. So in the Falcon tube, you can see there's BSA, bovine serum albumin, the negatively charged protein. I'm adding in the positively charged dye, and I'm gonna mix this quite a bit, and I'm gonna allow it to sit for a while that positively charged dye binds to the surface of the anionic protein. Now, after allowing that to sit for about 10 minutes, I'm adding the negatively charged Congo red dye. I'm hoping that this negatively charged dye will be repelled by the negatively charged surface of the protein. Now, it's important to note that I did add more of the negatively charged dye than did I the positively charged dye. This is important because in case the two dyes interact with one another just a little bit, there should still be an overwhelming amount of negatively charged dye interacting with the negative protein and hopefully excluding that negatively charged dye from the dialysis tubing. Now here you can see me adding the protein solution into the dialysis tubing, which very much looks like sausage casing at this point as I work the bubbles out. To the top portion of the tubing, I'm adding a second dialysis clamp so that we can set this to dialyze in a buffer solution at a physiological pH, set the stir bar in motion, and we hope now that that red-colored Congo red dye will dialyze away and that the blue dye will stay within the dialysis tubing. Awesome. So FYI, for those of you who were curious, that experiment did not work. It turns out that the two dyes form a pretty strong precipitate with one another. So the cool thing was that the students got to do a lot of troubleshooting as part of an online discussion that addressed some of the issues with troubleshooting in the laboratory, which is something you wouldn't get generally in a non-lab course. So with that being said, I know that there are probably many of you out there, I know there are many of you out there that rock my world, and that many of you have used some sort of flipped classroom approach, or maybe you've used vodcasts or podcasts to in some way augment your teaching. So I'm going to turn things back over to Callie, and you can poll in while she's getting all set to go. And if you just send a text message to UWYO, and text UWYO in your text message, send your text message to 37607 and tell us how you've used vodcasts, podcasts, or flipped lab approaches to augment your classes. Awesome, thanks for letting me come. I am so jazzed that I get to.
All right. So here is our poll everywhere. And okay, get out your telephones. Don't be shy. Oh, that's okay.
I'll do it.
Go
Represent. You can do it on your computer, actually.
Oh yeah, you can. You can.
Oh.
Maybe.
You just go to that. Yeah, just go to that.
I think that's actually a lot easier when I'm with students do that. It's just do it on the computer or iPad or something. Yeah.
Did you send one?
Okay.
I was practicing a lot last night, and I couldn't. None of these popped up till this morning. I was like, it's not working. But the capitals. So this is, Rachel's used this quite a bit, and also just for like, hey guys, how's it going today? It's mid-semester, and you know, we just had a test. How are you feeling? And it was amazing the responses that we got. She got like hundreds. Like, I'm hungry, you know. I nailed that test. To, you know, I really would like more help. So it's a really good way, and then it's also anonymous up here. I don't know if there is a way to find out. So free videos.
Yeah, so the university has like a license, so if you want to keep track of participation, that's a question I get a lot of times is, you know, I use Clickers because then I can keep track of attendance, participation, and if you set this up at the beginning of the semester, you can do that with Poll Everywhere here at UVA.
And I'm testing out right now, linking it with WIO courses, so points can go right into the WIO courses for participation. It's just literally today they unveiled it, so.
Yeah.
Is there any issue like some classes I know cell phone, there are students from all texting?
No, there's not really that issue here. In high school, there is a little bit. It's secondary, but I don't think that issue is so big for sharing. Have you guys noticed it being a problem? I mean, the problem is they're going to have them out anyway, so we might as well have them using them in a productive manner than not. But
One thing,
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing that I've noticed when I use this a lot, my students get very quiet. Instead of discussing things, they get very quiet. They sit and they try to answer the question. So I kind of stopped a little bit using it as much because I want them to discuss. So I tried to ask them, why are you getting so quiet? Oh, because they need to focus on putting the answers in. So I don't know, is there any other strategy for how to get them to discuss first and then pull it up, or how?
Yeah, well, you could, if you have it pulled up, registered like that, then and you could have them do a group, sorry, like
But
a
I don't
group, like a group
I don't
text,
like participation.
you know.
Don't open it up yet.
Yeah, and just encourage them to do.
Just give them the
And they
question.
open it, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but yeah. We have discussed the method as it is, and they're really liking it, but they get quiet.
I have to go first and then stuff, but it's really good, go ahead and go that, I don't know, once you go there, everybody makes sure that everybody.
Haley, what, I can't hear you, could you?
Oh, I said that I have to vote first and then discuss?
Just like a yes or no. And you can also do like A, B, C, D. This is a little more hidden. You can do cards, A, B, C, D, low tech. It's nice to do, it's nice to have online because then it can be anonymous and all of a sudden people can respond a lot better. So you can figure it out and get into the UW system. Yeah, that's what you can. Does anyone else use this for anything else? Pull everywhere? For any, like, just exam questions or pre-test, post-test you could use it for?
I use it for attendance. I ask a question for the class, unrelated to class content.
Fantastic.
Worst Christmas present you ever had, and I just come up with a different one every week.
Make it fun. That's awesome. I love it.
And do the answers get posted as you're doing it?
Yeah, so everybody
People
just
see it
goes
and
out
they're like,
and
yeah,
votes.
okay. And so.
And occasionally when I
Yeah,
see
good
good
humor.
Stream through.
when I see good ones, I'll ask, that was your worst Christmas present, or no? That's what you would want to make it? Why that?
Inspires a lot of good. So these cards, I'll come back to these cards. Chris, you like snowboarding? You getting ready? That little
Try.
brief snow this morning was making you happy? If you can include names and incorporate people, if you can make it more humanistic, individualized education, it is hard and it does take time, but your students realize that you care and they are that much more likely to participate and to show up. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, and so I did not want to blow over lecture because I know all of us use lecture primarily as our primary strategy. We don't have time, unfortunately, to do active learning all the time. And so when you're going to do lecture, as we all will, here are just a few of the basic things that I have to remind myself every day, but I find that if I do, it goes so much better. So this is tough. If you can do that, fantastic. You know, if you can't, don't worry about it. If you're brave enough to just be like, tell me your name again, all semester, that's great too. Doesn't matter. But that's tough. We all know, don't be monotone, right? I'll put you to sleep. This is really where I want to hit on right now. So questions, I see this all the time when I'm observing, and sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we forget it, and we don't repeat the questions. And so especially when you have a large class, nobody can hear your question, especially that girl or boy in the front. You can't hear it. And oftentimes the question's even stated in a poor way or it doesn't make sense. So you want to repeat the whole question and say, is this what you were asking? Really loud to the whole class. Did you hear the question? And then also from the flip side of that, student questions, right? We ask questions too, and especially in active learning classrooms, we're trying to get a lot more discussion, a lot more questions going on. When you ask questions, don't just ask a question. Say, I have a question for you guys. Let me ask you this question. And then if you want to know the participation, you say, John, I'm going to ask you a question real quick, all right? Can you help me with the most important rule when saying questions in class? Should I? Oh wait, let me repeat that question another way. What is something that we should always do when we ask questions in class? Right? So repeat the question. I mean, we put students on the spot all the time, and you just get the flushed look like, oh, I'm so scared, you know, or cry. And sometimes they know they're on it, but give them the benefit of the doubt that they just don't understand the question, that they need to hear their name. They might have just gotten a, you know, text or an email or finishing grades or whatever it might be, you know, and they need to, like, hey. Okay. I mean, how many of us remember this rule but forget it all the time? I don't know. You guys remember doing it all the time?
I didn't raise my hand because I didn't know that was a rule, so that's useful to know.
Oh, it is so helpful, and especially if you're gonna be like recording your classes, because you can never hear what a student's asking if you're recording it. And the podcasts are so nice. You go, oh, you know, that is such a great question. This is the question. Now let's talk about it. It helps immensely. It helps your students walk away feeling satisfied with the lecture rather than, I don't know what went on. I couldn't hear anything.
I would say one rule about questioning, I didn't know that one, so that's useful to know, but I always thank the person or say it's a great question. I always provide positive feedback. In a class of 120 or more, they don't want to speak up, they're nervous. Sometimes they're so nervous, all one guy could get out was, I'd really rather not give my opinion.
No problem. Thank you so much for,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's huge.
Also dealing with incorrect answers in a positive way.
Yeah, dealing with incorrect answers in a positive way. Thanks for that input. That's very useful for us to consider. What would that mean? Blah, blah, blah. And then say, trying to transition to like, how am I acting?
Or that's a huge misconception. We all have that. Right. It's super common. It's hard to overcome.
I find myself saying a lot, what's a great hypothesis? But who else?
Not saying, can you explain why you think that answer, or does somebody agree or disagree? Then you can sort of explore that answer more, where it came from and what the misconception behind it.
That's so true. And half the time when I do that, they go, oh wait, never mind. Like they figure it out as they're trying to explain it. So that's good. That's good. Point. Questions are huge.
I find it useful to do the same thing for correct answers as well. So that way, if you use the same response for right and incorrect answers, they don't know, you know, it doesn't come off as, oh man, I'm wrong. You just ask them because, like, you know, how they answer all the things.
And when you, along that same line, when you get correct answers, repeat those too. Just don't assume that everyone heard them. You know, no one, you can't hear anything in this big lecture hall. Narratives. Rachel's really good at this, but if you can bring in your stories, they, just as you want to individualize for your students, they want to hear about your life. And if you're a real person, all of a sudden they're like, you're a real person, you know, like, I saw them at the bar, or whatever it might be, out hiking or wherever, but they love stories. I'm not the greatest at using stories. I've had to practice that. I just don't like really talking about myself, so it doesn't feel like something I want to do. But when I do, and I start telling a story that, you know, you incorporate something. Do any of you guys use narratives or try to plan these ever? Like, yeah. They work well, yeah? No?
It doesn't always have to be about you either.
Uh-uh. Just a story.
Helpful.
Yeah, I use my stepson a lot.
Oh, my dad sometimes. My grandpa.
I do, and he knows I'm doing it too. Oh. And I wirecast my lectures now, so there was something about pizza. It's not good for epigenetics.
Yeah.
Changes. You know, we get to kale, we get epigenetics changing, we eat pizza, and we're joking around about this. And I watched the wirecast, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. But yeah, it's effective. They get to laugh a little bit and they're relaxing. Sometimes just they don't understand what I'm talking about, but that's also great.
I think narratives also are just useful from the newspaper. I mean, it's very current. I go through the newspaper, bring in the newspaper, something related to pop culture, newspaper, whatever, in every class. And then it's just something that's relevant to what they're learning. And I mean, because I don't have a story for every aspect of like excellent comparative, I don't have a personal. But you can often find something.
Wait, so you bring in a newspaper and find something related to class every day from the newspaper?
Yes. So basically, all either New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Okay, it's not always from the newspaper. I should have said I also include scientific journals that are the layperson summary. Yeah. So layperson summary, whatever it is, but I can always find something, and I try and make sure it's within the past 2 years. So it is a current article. And every class we do a short reading. So they have a little break, we do a short reading of a paragraph, and then we discuss it. They really like it. It's like every single person on a mid-year, mid-semester evaluation of class, every single evaluation listed that.
How long does that take you?
10 minutes. I give them 3 or 4 minutes to read it, and then we discuss for a few minutes. They really like it. It's very applied, gets them engaged, and it's specifically related to whatever the lecture material is.
This is in genetics?
So we're doing autism spectrum disorders as an overarching theme for transmission genetics, the first third of the class, and every class had a reading. And there was, I didn't know this, but there was evidence of excellent inheritance or markers for autism spectrum disorders. And then whatever else we were doing, every class there was a reading related to those. And then there was just really things about like that English couple that was trying to decide if they could do pre-implantation genetic diagnosis for a deaf child. They wanted they were deaf, they wanted a deaf child. I mean, there's just all sorts of things you can do that turn out to be very contemporary stories, and they're going to be faced with all these decisions for if they have children, and they like that one, so it's their one.
Current events are perfect way to incorporate that. A lot of times will have students actually like their Fridays are their jobs for current events. And so I can do Mondays and Wednesdays or something, and then they would do Fridays, and you can sign them up, and they have, you model it, and then they come and give you an example. And they like that too, because they like to see, find interest and passion. But science literacy, one of the, ways that it's defined is the fact that you can read and participate in modern science, popular articles, and you can read them, you can understand them, you can make decisions. And so incorporating those, even if it's not a part of your curriculum, is huge. It makes those connections. I want to come visit your class.
I like that. I mean, that's my favorite part of it.
So you just have set alerts, or you go through manually, or you have set alerts?
I go through manually, so it takes some time to find something, but I like to do it. The students like it, and I guess it's part of the class that I feel like is preparing them just to be voters and informed citizens. Even if and I kind of think they remember it more than anything else. They've read it, they've talked about it, they're interested in it. Even if they don't remember anything else about X-linked inheritance, I bet a lot of them remember that some small percent of the variance in autism spectrum disorders could be possibly, some populations contribute to.
That's actually something I focus on a lot. So I teach our non-majors courses, right? Is preparing these guys to be informed citizens. Yeah. I think a lot about that. So I built in an assignment very similar. I don't really use narratives, but I like when they're sharing their stories, they're asking their questions. And so I've got the Science Today assignment, I call it, where twice, 6 times throughout the semester, but for our topic, viruses and vaccinations, for example, right now, we did this yesterday. They go out and they have a week to do this. They find a relevant article. It has to be within the last couple of years. Write up a summary, think about bias. And we discuss these articles, and great questions come out of these. And they remember their topic, right? And so they bring it up later in the unit, and they'll ask questions on it. But what I see in my evaluations is that students love that assignment. They love being able to go out and look into, what's going on in the world, and ask their questions and tell their stories. And so,
also, I think it helps if the article you're reading relates to visually or very evidently detectable phenomena. So autism spectrum disorders are more common in males, and so X-linked inheritance could be one mechanism to really come for that. And so it actually is important to the genetics we're learning. It could apply to their lives, maybe related to their, prenatal diagnoses, and then they also understand why autism spectrum disorders are possibly more common in males. So it's good if it kind of engages on multiple levels, but that's hard to satisfy.
I think we're running out of time. I just want to wrap up. Don't forget to go. ask a question, we so often like want a response right then. And you're so often in the class where you're like,
Oh, I can't jump.
I need to process, like, give me one moment. And so it goes back to this repeat and reword, and also just give them a moment. Turn to a partner, chat with a partner. All right, now let's come back.
And that's working in active learning, right? Having them kind of think and discuss and maybe jot something down before you ask them to respond, right? So they've thought about it a little bit, more comfortable with their response and more willing to speak out.
They say 7 seconds, then somebody in the room is going to feel uncomfortable enough to vocalize something.
Yeah, but me.
Yeah, try not to make it. But, yeah.
That is the hardest thing for teachers. You're just standing there like, I can't wait anymore.
I count. I'm like,
But what if you just say, I'm gonna wait 10 seconds? And then it's not stressful for you anymore, right? Because you're waiting 10 seconds.
As long as you're dancing for them. So here are some resources. I will post these up online. I wanted to show you guys. So Bree started this work space in WIO courses. Where did it go? And it's called Life Science Teaching Community. So I think it would be beneficial for, I think you guys have great ideas, but we need to be sharing these all together, you know. I do current events, I do this, I do that. So whatever we have, so that we're not relying on one person to create everything. So I think we had discussed that we have a new discussion section in here for active learning resources. And so I will post this PowerPoint and I will add some other articles, and you guys please do too. And let's just make this a forum, like an open forum for everybody to post your ideas, post things that work for you, post websites that are amazing. Does that sound like a nice place? If you guys have any other ideas about where resources could be best provided, shoot me an email, let me know, give me feedback, let's go out for lunch. This looks like it might be a good place, but it would be nice if we're all have consensus on it and we're all using the same thing.
So this is a WIO group?
It is a WIO group. So it's called Life Sciences Teaching Community.
And so this is something that I developed a couple years ago. I think most of you have joined now at this point, but if you haven't, I should have sent an invitation to you. If you can't find it, let me know. I think I can resend invitations. And what I've been doing here is just posting summaries after our meetings that we've had as a life science team, although I don't think I posted one after this call yet. But and then resources, questions that come up. So after that meeting we had on writing effective learning outcomes, I think it was last fall, right? Amy had some good questions, so I did some research and responded to them in the discussion. There's information in here for graduate students as well. So right now we have a space where we're developing a 1010 platform. I have some general resources for our graduate teaching assistants, garden club information. So this is for faculty and graduate students in the life sciences program. And if you guys, like Callie said, have ideas on how to make this better, let us know. So I'm always looking for ways to improve here on this.